Someone cooked here. More! More! Oh yeah!
Dino Crisis 2 decides to ditch everything you know about the series and flips it on its head, splitting the screen time between two characters, now in Regina and Dylan, adding shops where you can buy health, weapons, and ammo, adding a combo system where you get points for killing dinosaurs and then use those points in the shop I just mentioned, and streamlining the game into a very linear game with less focus on exploration and puzzles, and more emphasis on getting good and killing things. Dino Crisis 2 is not a survival horror game at all. The closest this game gets to that feeling is in its underwater section, which serves as a breather and transition into the final act of the game. Action, tank controls, and fixed camera angles sounds awkward, and there is some jank as always, but for the most part, it works. They smooth out some of that jank with the ability to run and gun, giving you sub-weapons, and in general, everything feeling faster. And with that more linear change in game design, you won't be sitting around wondering where to go. You might stop to see the scenery, with this game replacing the cold feeling of a lab and night of the first with a more tropical daylight setting. Taking place in the jungle, following the design Shu originally intended, and it fits so good. Seeing dinosaurs roam in the background, or those little useless dinosaurs scavenge around, really adds the feeling of this place being alive, which is incredibly needed since the cast in this game is mostly dinosaurs. On the human side of things, we have Regina returning, Dylan, Dave, and this random girl who can't really speak all that well. There's a few faceless humans running around, but the thing I really like about the Dino Crisis series so far is there isn't really a human antagonist. Kirk is probably the closest so far, but when you think there's going to be some big evil twist, well, it's a different twist instead. The game is broken down into 4 sections. You have the jungle serving as your main area, the third energy facility, aka the water level, the city being one of the last big areas, and you top it off with the labs because it's a Capcom game. It's always got to end in the lab. Once you fix the boat, you can travel between these areas freely, but you're rarely going back to locations. It's mostly a one and done type deal. The only exception being the jungle. You'll be running back here at least twice over the course of the game. So there isn't much backtracking put here, and that checks out with the length of the game, clocking in around 5ish hours for me, and that's including some heavy pauses to write notes and stuff. So more realistically, you're looking at around 4 hours give or take. But Dino Crisis 2 has a heavy emphasis on replay, whether that's in-game where you feel like I could have done this room a lot better, or hitless to get a bonus, or just replaying the game to get more unlocks for endgame content or to unlock all the weapons in-game, making the 4-hour spot pretty sweet to play through in a day. Adding the wide range of guns you can use adds to a lot of the fun, the only caveat being certain sub-weapons are required for certain tasks, like Dylan's machete to cut down doors or Regina's stun gun to open doors and play Beat Saber. This is circumvented by you having all your weapons on you, no need for an item box or any of that. The game has a really nice flow that very rarely gets interrupted, but it does like to switch up gameplay a few times. I like to call these transition sections. Instead of a boss fight to end a chapter, they instead add some different variety of gameplay. The first of these is once you get your boat running, it'll turn into this chase sequence as we head into another dock, turning gameplay into on rails. And typically, I hate on rails, but this is mostly fun. Then gameplay will take a drastic change with the underwater segment, giving you an infinite ammo gun, a stun, and the ability to jump. There's a bigger focus on aquatic dinosaurs here that's genuinely cool to see. My only gripe being, you can totally make this jump. Other than that, having this serve as a breather from all the action of the first half works in my book. The other section is more similar to the first, with another chase / on rails, only this time dealing with the Triceratops. They're framed as friendly in the note you find, except when it comes to their children, and Dylan and Regina both find a dying youngling, which leads to the events. Up until this point in the game, which is closer to the end, I did not die. Until this stupid Triceratops. You're supposed to shoot them and keep them away, hitting them every time they're about to attack, but you only have one bullet, and it does reload quite fast, but there can be a bit of desync on the timing, which allows you to get hit. It's nothing too big, but I just don't want to die. One more switch up in gameplay is this little back and forth section where you quickly go between playing as Regina and Dylan. Normally the switch is more spaced out, but here instead it works as you covering each other. First Regina, then Dylan, then Regina again. Shooting these flares up to signal your partner to rain down hell on a few dinosaurs. It's a short little section that builds up on Dylan and Regina's camaraderie. That comes up often and is actually a plot point.
Come on, stop playing around.
We have another section this time, running around as a tank, trying our best to escape the T-Rex, but we're in a tank. We can't just blow him up. The final section is just covering Dave. It's fine. The only thing memorable about Dave is his arms and the constant use of bro.
Dude. Bro! Bingo! Whoa. Let the men handle this. Let's go, bro.
I have to show you this because I think it's just so funny.
I'll save you, bro!
This is so absurd. Regina just walks a few steps and watches that man get eaten, and the dinosaur is just super chill about it apparently. God, I love it. In terms of boss fights, there's really only one, maybe two. Underwater, there's this giant dinosaur you gotta take down, but it's not too hard. Then you have a gimmick fight with the real big bad who just took a bite out of the T-Rex we've been running from. And the fight is pretty simple, running around, turning on canisters to shoot and cause fire damage. You run into him again at the end as Dylan, and it's something similar to the fight I just mentioned, except here you turn on the supercomputer at 3 different spots, which then beams down this giant light on him that sends him to the 9 circles of hell. A little drastic if you ask me. So, as far as Dino Crisis goes, all I wanted is just a simple one-on-one with a big dinosaur, and safe to say, they do give you that. They have this big guy roaming around in the more open areas, serving as a tougher enemy and mini boss of sorts, giving lots of points and even having a weak spot on his side you can expose. It's all I wanted. Consider me grateful. Okay, let's talk about some plot stuff. Dino Crisis 2's plot is convoluted and can be a bit hard to follow. It's also pretty bare bones for the most part until the very end. I know. How can it be both convoluted and pretty bare bones? But just stay with me. About a year after the events of the first game, another third energy problem happens. Except instead of bringing the past in, I believe a city is sent to the future. This is a bit of a spoiler because we're led to believe it's the past. Again, it's pretty convoluted, but I believe this is the case. Regina, Dylan, and David are part of a rescue squad sent in to save the survivors in the city and bring them back to the correct time. However, things don't go smoothly and most of the team is wiped out by raptors, with the 2 main characters floating downriver, and this is where the game would normally start. Over the course of the game, you'll run into these helmet characters who throw frisbees and will eventually save and capture one. Except she doesn't really talk, but she does make it a point to be overly familiar with Dylan.
Hey. What are you doing? Stop it. What's the matter?
Later, we'll even find she has a pendant that belongs to Dylan's sister. There's a lot of weird things you start noticing too, like some areas looking like they've been here forever, and that doesn't add up, since Dylan and Regina are sent in relatively quickly. So that brings up a lot of questions. Does time work differently and the survivors have been here longer than we thought, or is something else going on? Most of the plot so far is just running around grabbing parts for the bow, exploring the reactor, and trying our best to figure out what's been happening. We're also looking for the data on the third energy, which is basically the disc from the first game. By the time we reach the city finally, it's nothing more than just a short stop, only reaching it after being chased by some Triceratops and then being surrounded by raptors. Creating a similar scene to the intro, only Dave shows up in a helicopter and kills everything this time around. The funny thing about this is in the scene right after, the helicopter is somehow crashed and on fire. Nice one, Dave. The entire point of this game was to save survivors, but it's clearly too late. So the gang goes back to the jungle, to the missile silo, where we finally find the third energy data. With the data, the team escapes downriver, only for one to die and the other 2 to be separated, where Dylan runs into that blonde girl again. The blonde girl that's been helping us out is named Paula. She leads Dylan to this high-tech facility where we come across this note that can be a bit hard to fully follow, talking about time going wrong in a project called Noah's Ark, but more on that in a bit. Dylan will then find a recording that was left for him by him.
There's not much time left, so I'll explain it short and simple. On August 10th, 2055, our Noah's Ark plan became successful.
Year 2055? What's he talking about?
To save the dinosaurs, we transferred the dinosaurs to this time, 3 million years ahead of our time.
What? 3 million years? Then you're from...
But there was another accident when we were about to go back. The gate disappeared and we were stranded in this time.
Oh, so kind of like Phil.
Phil of the future, he's a 22nd century man.
This is the part that can be a bit confusing to wrap your head around, especially in the moment. Those biker-looking people were actually teenagers and children from this facility. They were put into these life support chambers as a way to preserve humanity. Since Dylan knew Dylan was coming, he figured he might be able to save them. The chambers came with a downside though, since they were originally intended for dinosaurs only, adding the side effect of losing speech, although it's believed to be regainable. Also, Paula isn't Dylan's sister like you may be led to believe, and is actually Dylan's daughter.
Then you're my...
One of the teenagers also set off the self-destruct sequence, but lucky for our trio, there's a time gate in the back. So Regina, Paula, and Dylan all escape and live happily ever after. Actually, Paula gets stuck under a pillar and Dylan decides to stay with her, leaving their fate pretty ambiguous. At least in context of this game. You have a lot of people flipping back and forth around here, whether they die here or if Regina is able to come back at a different time and save these two. There's just a lot of time shenanigans going on, and I can't forgive the game for kind of cooking up here and ending immediately. It's very anticlimactic and abrupt. The good thing is, the storyline doesn't technically end here. While there is a Dino Crisis 3, depending on who you ask, the story for Dylan and Paula would find some continuation in Dino Stalker. That's a video for next time though. But for now, let's clear things up and create a better timeline. It goes kind of like this. The Dino Crisis 1 incident happens, which creates a problem in the past that causes humans to no longer exist. In the future, humanity comes up with a plan called Noah's Ark. By somehow going further into the future and placing dinosaurs there, it fixes things. However, the team gets stuck in that time, and our main character Dylan is also on board, or is the leader of the project. I forget how that part goes. The children get put into these recovery chambers for a few years since Dylan knows when our Dylan is coming and hopes for a better future for the children. Then the Edward City accident happens with Third Energy and gets sent to that same time. The children wake up and start having a war with the time displaced people because dinosaurs are running around and the children protect the dinosaurs, as the dinosaurs are needed to keep humanity alive, also it being the last thing their parents did. Now, the key thing is, this has been going on for a few years, as evident by the skeleton remains and even notes talking about time passing. Well, because the rescue was taking a long time and people becoming hopeless, the general decided to shoot a missile that would basically nuke the dinosaurs. That would never happen as most people died and the rest were held up in Edward City. Finally, Regina, Dylan, and the rescue squad arrive and the game unfolds. The only confusing part is the end with Dylan and Paula. I'm pretty confident they die here, but are saved from a different time period. But that would create a different branching path, I believe. This is a real headache with understanding how Dylan fits overall. It could be read as either a time loop or separate timelines, with old Dylan being the main timeline and humanity's downfall, and our Dylan as being able to branch into an alternate path. Since old Dylan, when he did his mission, didn't run into an old Dylan, but because he knew young Dylan was coming, he could leave a message for himself. This would create a branching path that's new, since it seems like he dies here and Regina is hopefully sent back to her original time to then be able to go back to a different period and save Dylan and Paul before their death. The time plot aside, Dino Crisis 2 is a banger. It doesn't overstay its welcome and clearly knows how to have fun. Dino Crisis 2 was supposed to be even bigger than what we got, a lot more cinematic, a lot more things happening, and an even darker twist on the story. Changing the story from just being stuck to instead being quarantined because of a virus and dying off. This would be the only true sequel, at least in style, to the original Dino Crisis. Dino Stalker would have story elements, but gameplay was vastly different, and Dino Crisis 3, well, we don't talk about that game, but I will eventually. The Dino Crisis series would remain dormant, but as seen recently, holds a pretty strong fan base still, with fans still holding out for a remake and breath into this late franchise. For both this and the original video I did, this has been my first time playing both of these titles, and I've enjoyed both of them quite a bit, with both giving a very different experience each. What the future holds for Dino Crisis, who knows, but these games will always be here. I know this one was pretty short, but I think I have something cooking up. Well, hopefully future me puts out that video so younger me can watch that, do the video. It's future math something, daughter, take it easy.
Yes, that is a really kind of scary story. To kind of make ends meet, my dad and I would go fishing down by Taffy's Creek. It was like a woman, only on her arm, on her hands and everything, it was like hair, like a real dark, almost black hair.